Call this Town Council October 17th meeting to order. Town Clerk, will you please do a roll call?
Councilmember Trolinger,
Present.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward,
Present.
Councilman Jenkins,
Present.
Mayor James, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Could I ask you all to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
we do have a request to amend the agenda tonight. It's coming out of the police department, and that is to hear a request to hire and one officer above their current allotment. We have two captains in the room that could speak to the agenda item if you would like to include that in the agenda, and we could queue it probably at the 4.3. And also,
Okay.
with visitors tonight, I did not know if you wanted to move 4.2 above 4.1. Or if you wanted to take that.
I'd love for them to sit there and see how the process works here. That's okay. We'll see. I don't mind. I think both of them are going to be very entertaining. So we do not have Monica here from HR.
No, we do not.
Okay, I would like to postpone the request until next week so we can have Monica and see. We don't have any type of documentation in front of us. So if we could be better prepared for next week so that we can make a decision based on what HR and our treasurer says and have something in writing is what I'm proposing, unless anyone else has a stronger feeling about that.
If so, is this discussion kind of on the motion to amend?
Motion to
Yes,
amend.
sir.
All right, so I think it's important for Monica to be here. I think we're seeing, I don't know, it's an urgent need. Is that why we want to get this on?
Yeah,
Is this a candidate that we're going to miss out on if we don't?
I
go
think
through
it's more
today,
of
is
an
that something-
academy that we would miss out on, the start of an academy, which would set us back potentially 6 months before the next academy would start. The details are sitting in the back of the room more so than me, but I think that's what's the pressing is the start of one of the Anne Arundel academies.
Is there any reason why we weren't emailed this information prior to for consideration?
Well, it came in late, obviously.
Did it just come in today?
But it came in at least, I know Chief has been asking the question end of last week and then yesterday.
And when does the academy begin?
Just a minute, I'm working.
Okay, so we do have next week, we could, we have a meeting next week for sure. And we can put that on the agenda next week. Okay, I would feel more comfortable if that is the will of the council, so that we do have,
They're like, not this again. Oh my God, it's not just like last year and
okay. So, thanks, Martha. So if it's the will of the council, if we could get all the information and be able to digest it next week so that we could make a motion to, or hear them out, if that's okay with you.
I think if we can confirm that everybody that is needed can be there for that. I
Could we
mean,
make-
it's I guess, I mean, if the chief was asking for it last week, it's, maybe it was a snafu as far as what was submitted versus what's been, like, I don't want to put form over substance, but if it's more helpful to get everybody what they need, and we can confirm that we can go forward, we don't lose a spot. Okay with that.
Are you all right with that, pushing it to next week, since we don't have any of the information here anyway? And we have we'll have the HR person give us.
So they can wait another week. It won't jeopardize the opening at the academy. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm not sure. I gotta,
Yeah, they can wait another week. It's just if they do the hire, it's going to compress a lot of things before the academy begins on the 10th, such as outfitting new officer, things of that nature prior to the academy.
So we're asking to add an officer above what we're currently budgeted for. So wouldn't that be a budget amendment as well?
It very well could be, and again, without the, I don't know that we want to present the topic right now. We can, and then trying to answer whether you want to amend the agenda or not.
Well-
There's a lot of moving parts, and it would be
Yes.
better explained by the captains.
So I'm going to make a motion that we amend the agenda so 4.2 becomes 4.1 and 4.1 becomes 4.2. Do I have a second?
I'm not sure did you address the request or you?
I don't understand.
Well, just not adding to the agenda. So,
Okay,
and not add anything
Moving
else. to the agenda.
Stagecoach. to
So
the top of the queue.
Stagecoach before the Ward 1 vacancy. Do I have a second?
Okay, so hang on a second here. So we're talking about moving 4.1 to 4.2 and switching those out.
Correct.
I don't know that we had a vote on again, for or against adding the
Well-
agenda item of 4.3, right?
We're voting to amend the agenda, which means that if you don't like the proposed motion on there, then you can not second it, and then you can amend the amended one. I am not including it in tonight's agenda.
Got it.
So do I have a second?
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Wait, I wouldn't make a comment for during the discussion item. I guess it's no harm per se, but from my perspective, it would seem we have more urgency to talk about the vacancy than Stagecoach, to be very frank about it. So that's why I'm going to vote no.
So all in favor of amending the agenda as stated, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No,
Nay. We've got 2 and 2.
Okay, so it failed. I will wait for someone to make a motion to accept the agenda as presented tonight or to amend the agenda.
I would make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Okay? Do I have a second? I will second it. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Can we
Oh,
just,
any discussion?
yeah,
Sorry.
just to be clear, this is as presented without
Right.
Yeah.
the amendment of 4.3.
Yes,
Or
and I
of
mean,
the proposed addition to 4.3
As it is.
mhm.
as given. Okay. Just to be clear.
So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, let's try the third time today. Do we have a motion? So just so I can recap, the the agenda that is presented right in front of us. 4.1 is the Ward 1 vacancy, 4.2 is the Stagecoach, and there is no addition for the last minute request. That's what was just denied. Then when the first one was 4.2 becomes 4.1 and 4.1 becomes 4.2, and that was denied. So if someone has something else.
I'm confused, because you denied.
Motion was to accept it as written today,
Yeah,
Okay,
not adding any of the police stuff.
okay,
Right.
but we want,
That way.
but you denied the first one, which was only
Same,
putting the
only
4.2 as 4.1.
Switch the order.
Okay,
That's fine. Pardon.
Yeah, and to be clear, we've heard from Mr. Manuel on adding an officer above allotment, which I appreciate. We don't have Ms. Karina here to speak to budget issue about it. But given the pressing nature of what it seems to be, I'd like to hear from the officers that were here. We may not vote on it, but I'd like to hear from them specifically as it relates to this request before
That-
we deny the request.
That
That's
would-
why I voted nay on the 2, just so you're aware. I don't care whether we flip flop 4-1 and 4-2. I
But
just,
for them to speak, we need to amend the agenda because they're
I
not on the
understand.
agenda.
I'm explaining my nay vote on the prior 2. And of course, I can make a motion to amend the budget or amend the agenda by adding 4.3 as requested to add an officer above the allotment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay.
I vote aye.
Okay, ayes come before the nays. All right, so we'll add them for 4.3. And we have, oh, it's gonna be a long meeting. if We can't get an approval on the meeting agenda. All right, moving along, approval of minutes for October 10th open session as well as October 10th closed session. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented for the open session and the closed session?
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
I move that we accept the meeting minutes for the open session of October 10th and the closed session of October 10th as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. This brings us to public comment. Do I have anyone who would like to speak this evening? If so, I ask that you state your name, whether you live in the incorporated town limits, and please keep it to 3 minutes. That would be greatly appreciated. Anyone? All right, we'll go to 4.1, Ward 1 vacancies. So we have our attorney here this evening, as well as our town manager that will lead us through this. Floor is yours.
I'll start, Madam Mayor. It's good to see you all in person. I am sorry to be here in person and have our department council person not be sitting here and have this subject. I had the utmost respect for all of you, and he was a great anchor on the team. So government goes on, and I was asked to review the legal parameters of how you fill a vacancy, which are pretty straightforward. And then also some practical parameters, while other places do in the state, so that you can see how you want to go about this. You should have received a memorandum, which was prepared by your legislative department, and I read it through. It's an excellent memorandum that she's prepared with all of the things that are necessary and some local examples for you. But for the public, so they can understand what we're talking about, when there's a vacancy, your charter requires that you fill the vacancy with somebody who is qualified to hold the seat. So that would be, they have to be a registered voter, they have to be over 18, they have to live in the ward and in the town, and there's a residency requirement that they had to live there for so long prior to that. So that's the pool of individuals that are eligible to hold the seat. And there is no special election that does not go back to the populace because you're just replacing somebody for the remainder of the unexpired term. So you all basically do that. And you would do that based on a vote. So again, you need to have a majority, which would be 3 of you, decide who that person would be. That's the legal mechanics. So in some places, they do it very cut and dried. Somebody says, I want so-and-so to be the person. There's a second, and you discuss it, and then you put the person in, and it could be that quick. A lot of places say, yes, while you could do that legally, it doesn't really have the inclusion and the openness for people who want to get involved in your community, which is why you all wanted to do this. You wanted to step forward and be involved. And so what most places do is they say, well, why don't we open it up and advertise that people could come into this vacancy? And again, you have to be very clear, because if you live in the wrong ward, you could think you're trying to apply and it doesn't work. So you're going to have to narrow that down. But you could advertise in different media, whether it's your website or whether it's on however. And usually places give them a certain period of time because government has to continue. So you can't let this thing drag on forever. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if somebody's interested, type of thing. You're asking for volunteers for the community, not for an employee. You don't really have them fill out a whole job thing. You basically said, can you send me a letter of interest so you have something in writing with your signature that you know you're considering? You might want to say a little bit about yourself. You know, maybe they could put a resume, but not required. Tell us why you're interested in the position. It's usually something that you can judge on. Most people who are interested in the community will already volunteer that. I'm on the planning commission, I'm on the beautification committee, and they'll tell you, and you'll be familiar with them. And the only other thing that is required is, as you know, to sit and to be candidates and to sit on the board, you have to have a financial disclosure form. So you might as well lead with that, because that sometimes deters people. They don't want to fill these things out. So right up front, you should have a copy of the form in with this or a link to it, because it's on your website saying, and you'll have to fill this financial disclosure form out. And at that point in time, I would suggest that you then all share these things and have a meeting where you can talk about it. There's two options. You can do that meeting in private, or you can talk about it since it's personnel, or you could do that meeting in public. That's it. Some towns go to the next level where they say if there's not that many candidates, they want to interview them. You know, they want to bring them in and say, hey, I want to talk. They typically do that in private so that you can have a one-on-one with them. And then everybody gets a chance to have 2 minutes or something with you and answer any of your questions and things like that. It usually is best for transparency to take your vote and your discussion about who you want in public. That's usually works. So that's kind of soups to nuts of how places do this. You don't want the process to drag on. You can look from your charter that because you're not having a special election, because some towns require it to go back to the popular. But your charter was deemed to have you all do it, and you can kind of infer from that that it was supposed to be a rapid thing so that government moves on. You know, that ward is now unrepresented. That's what you're trying to fix. Questions?
I have a question. You said that you reviewed the memo. The recommendations that were made in this memo said to publish a notice, have legislative services review to make sure that they are qualified, meaning that they have met the minimum residency requirements and that they are in the ward. That we go into closed session to review the submissions, and then on November 14th, after having it published, and then the 21st, we have it in open session. Do you agree with that recommendation?
I agree with that and the timing that's put into it. I'd love to see it sooner, but realistically, for you, for the people that are applying, this is their second or third job. And they're like, and so you can't expect somebody to say, I'm going to do it this week and get it out. So this allows everybody to ask questions. The hard part in other towns is not the advertisement and the receipt. It's the making sure what you got in is correct. They don't fill the forms out the first time because they've never done it before. They don't know how to do it. So you're going to need that time to perfect it. And you'll be telling them, hey, you have so many days until it happens. So yes, I concur with the recommendation.
Okay. Counsel, any questions for our attorney?
I have a question. Thank you. It says on the recommendation number 1, publish a notice. What would be envisioned as a public notice? Okay.
Have a link to the map. If you live in that area, we would like you to be, submit a letter of interest. And then I would think that it also would say, along with this letter of interest, you will be required to submit this financial disclosure form and have a link to that. Give the deadline, and I wouldn't go too much. Some places say, here's the job description. Well, you know what you guys do. You do everything. So, you know, the reality is you might want to tell somebody that it's required to meet every Tuesday. I mean, that's a big thing. This isn't one where you can just meet once a month. So that's what I would envision, something in layman's terms that laid out what you're getting into.
Thank you. So it's not a legal notice, just a informational notice.
Yeah, you want
Okay.
the person that wants to help in the community, you want to get their attention and say, yeah, I could do this.
Thank you.
So would the proper procedure now be to make a motion to accept the recommendations here?
Yeah, I think you should have something on the record that you all agreed to the process so that there's no question about the end result then.
I will entertain a motion if,
Madam Mayor,
yes.
I move that we accept the process for filling the vacancy for Ward 1 as presented by Legislative Director.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Fellows, for that input. All right, next brings us to 4.2, which is Stagecoach. Come on down. If you could put your mics on too, please.
Yeah.
Good evening. It's nice to, I know you all have had a long day, so thank you for entertaining us and putting us on your agenda. For the record, Ms. Phipps reminded me to say that I am Sue Greer on behalf of the applicant Stagecoach La Plata LLC. With me tonight is Kurt Fisher of Venable, also representing the applicant, as well as Ed Carroll of Soltes, who, as you know, is the engineer on the project. I know that you all know that I love to talk. I will not be doing the speaking tonight, so you can all take a sigh because we know that I'm very, very detailed and want to make sure I cover everything. Not that Mr. Fisher won't, but I think he's probably more succinct and more eloquent than I am. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Fisher.
Well, that was very kind. And that might be the only inaccurate thing that we tell you all this evening. I'll join Ms. Greer in thanking you for placing us on the agenda so we have an opportunity to present this evening. We are before you to request the approval of a development infrastructure agreement for the Stagecoach project. In August, the mayor and council directed the county attorney to negotiate a final agreement with Stagecoach, a final infrastructure agreement. And we have held numerous discussions with the county attorney. We held an extended meeting with the town manager, the director of planning and zoning, as well as the town attorney. We think as a result of these discussions, we've received comments and we've made responses and we've made changes to the proposed agreement in response to those comments. We think the agreement is now in a posture where it is not only consistent with the long-term policies of the town, literally over a generation, but it's also an agreement that from a financial perspective is favorable to the town. I think it assures the lack of risk to the town, but at the same time provides for a staged plan build out of the Stagecoach project. Now, it's really a privilege for me to appear before you on a matter that's this important to the town. This is the first time that I've appeared before you, although I feel like I've spent a huge chunk of my adult life in La Plata because I've represented Charles County on litigation matters and land use matters since 1988. So my experience with the town of La Plata is in the context of the county and the county's comprehensive plan. Now, the provision of sewer and water infrastructure to the southwest quadrant and Stagecoach has been under consideration, the provision of that infrastructure since 2015, actively under consideration. 5 alignments for sewer infrastructure have been proposed. 2 have been adopted at various times by the town sewer and water staff. It's been a long process. You know, we are absolutely not here tonight to cast aspersion about any part of that process. I know it's public information that there was a personality conflict. We are absolutely steering away from those types of issues. We think that given the strong efforts of the town staff, since we really went after this agreement beginning in May, have borne fruit. And frankly, we are entirely optimistic about this agreement, about this project, and really bringing to fruition the town's policy really for a generation. I'd like to do two things in the presentation this evening. The first is to explain the history and the importance of the Southwest Quadrant and the Stagecoach development to the town in terms of the town's overall comprehensive plan and future. I'm going to move through that quickly because I know it's familiar to many of you. I don't want to sit here tonight and pretend I understand the town's comprehensive plan and the importance of the Southwest Quadrant more than the members of the council and the mayor. The second part, though, where I will spend a little more time on is the terms of the development infrastructure and agreement that we have negotiated with the town staff. The purposes of the agreement in our mind were to eliminate any requirement that the town spend upfront money for the construction of regional, or it's called community infrastructure, so that those outlays to construct that infrastructure, that regional infrastructure, are the responsibility of the developer. And second, to eliminate any appreciable long-term or short-term financial risk to the town. And as well, I will explain, I think, through the extended discussions that we've had with the staff and with work on our part and the adjustments we've made, that we really have put together a financial package in concert with the town's fees that really puts the town in an excellent financial posture to enable its vision for the Southwest Quadrant to be realized. I think we provided you with a PowerPoint going in, personal copies, and I see it's posted as well. The first page just shows where the Southwest Quadrant is, and I know you all are familiar with that, and Stagecoach in relation to the Steeplechase project and the Earnshaw property, which is scheduled, not scheduled, but is proposed for development at some point. Now, in terms of the vision for the Southwest Quadrant, the properties were annexed in 1996 and designated as a priority funding area. Stagecoach was listed as 4 planned communities that were envisioned for a priority funding area. In 2000, there was a vision plan, which was adopted for La Plata, and it called for a vibrant, business-oriented downtown area, pedestrian-friendly, with also larger businesses north of town. But the Southwest Quadrant was identified for residential development, and we believe high-end residential development that would provide a substantial economic benefit to the town. But the importance of the residential development in the Southwest Quadrant, and I think as the town's comprehensive plan recognizes, it's not just the tax benefits and the increase of the tax base, which is important and is significant, but it's also the fact that it creates a residential base for the support of the town's businesses on an active basis. And I think most studies of successful business centers, retail centers, businesses such as grocery stores and other similar businesses, that they're dependent on having a local base. And that while the town of La Plata can attract some regional customers and some regional users of its facilities and its businesses, that having that core residential base is important in the long run. And that's why the Southwest Quadrant was, I think, played such a prominent part of the town's comprehensive planning. And it's also why, frankly, it's attractive to to a developer such as Stagecoach at this point, because it will be in such a community that has mixed use within the immediate vicinity. So I think it's a positive. And in fact, not only has the town envisioned the southwest quadrant as being an area for development, the town has consistently made improvements in anticipation of the development of the southwest quadrant, including the expansions of the wastewater treatment plant. Now, in terms of the vision realized on slide 4, and I'm going to go through this very quickly now. The Stagecoach purchased the property in 2005. In 2009, Somerset Stagecoach purchased it in 2005, 2015 for the current owner. But most importantly for my purposes, in 2009, the town updated its comprehensive plan, and the southwest quadrant and residential development in the southwest quadrant was prominently described as important and crucial to the town's future development. In 2015, the USDA loan was sought for and extended by the USDA for the purpose of supporting water and sewer infrastructure in the southwest quadrant. And that was a significant event for the town in its ability to finance sewer and water infrastructure in the long run. But it was also particularly significant in that the southwest quadrant played a critical part in seeking and obtaining that financing from the USDA. So beginning on page 5 and going all the way through page 13, we've described for you the specific sections of the comprehensive plan which Stagecoach meets, and also to show that Stagecoach has worked really diligently to comply with each of the goals and realize each of the goals of the comprehensive plan. And I'm not going to go through and read those provisions tonight. I absolutely promise. They're there for you to consider, and most of them are familiar to you, I'm sure. But the point we want to make generally is that this is a 636 unit high-end residential development that Stagecoach actually cut the density in half and limited to residential to meet the goals of the comprehensive plan. That mixed use business uses were removed in favor of residential development, and the number of units was reduced in order not to create a compact, dense residential area, but a residential area that would truly be a green area with numerous amenities and forest and open space preserve, consistent with the overall goal of the town. So I'm going to move forward to page 13 and just make the point briefly that the concentration of this residential development in the southwest quadrant is entirely consistent with and implements the Charles County Comprehensive Plan, in that the Charles County Comprehensive Plan directs that 75% of all future residential development in the county be directed to the municipalities of Indian Head and La Plata. The major advantage of this development district and the concentration of 75% of residential development in the municipalities is that the infrastructure is there, is financed, and it's supposed to be there in order to support it. But I think probably even more importantly, the concentration of residential development where sewer and water are available and other public infrastructure allows the preservation of the bucolic areas of Charles County that we all appreciate. I mean, Charles County is blessed with extensive agricultural lands, extensive waterfront property, and the ability to preserve that beauty, which really is a calling card for the county in general, can be implemented under the county's comprehensive plan by the concentration of residential development in the municipalities. And really, that's what the southwest quadrant and Stagecoach do. Now, on the slide following page 13, we've got the preliminary plan and the phasing on the second page following page 13. And beginning on page 16, we have identified the amenities that this community is going to enjoy. And it really is a first-class, high-end, attractive residential community that's envisioned with a community center, a large community pool, extensive open space, park space, playgrounds for children, open air facilities for use of residents. And that continues, and you can see pages 17, 18, we've laid that out for you. 19 depicts the what we anticipate the hiking trails and biking trails will look like in the context of this community. But I'll tell you, I like slide 20, and I think that's particularly important because I guess we're all used to people showing us a lot of glossy pictures and promising a lot of things when they're trying to sell something. But I think what is present here is in terms of this development and its green character and its amenities, the proof really is in the pudding in the preliminary plan that's been approved. The total acreage is 267 acres. Of that, 152 acres or 57% will be in open space. The permanent forest, when I say permanent, that's restricted permanent forest land, is 91 acres or 34% of the entire site. The lots themselves and the roads will make up only 43% of the entire site. And it's envisioned that forested area and the open space area is going to be extensively improved with hiking and bike trails through the forested areas. Now, one thing that I wanted to comment on is Ms. Greer, who worked with me to put together this presentation, she has a real affinity for birds. And that's why we have so many pictures of birds. So if you think we've ever done the birds,
We are a bird
shift.
city. We are Maryland's first bird city, so that's why I'm sure she's doing that.
I didn't know that. But I'm trying to deflect blame for them. But I think there are some pictures of beautiful birds. But the short of it is that this community is designed, although it's within a municipality, it's within a priority funding area. It's within the development district. It's where residential development should be concentrated, that nonetheless, consistent with the comprehensive plan that you all have put together literally for a generation, we are going to have a green community that is really going to be an excellent addition to the viability, not only the economic viability, but the beauty and the desirability of La Plata as a community. So when I began by saying we're optimistic, we really are optimistic that Stagecoach is now contributing something that's appreciable and lasting in terms of the viability of La Plata. Now let me get to the specifics of the development infrastructure agreement with that introduction. I know much of that you all are familiar with. The goals that I think were shared by the town attorney, the town manager, and Ms. Greer and I, on behalf of Stagecoach, are to provide local and Southwest Quadrant regional infrastructure in an orderly and sustainable manner, to make it workable, make the phasing and the order of provision of the services absolutely sustainable and possible. The second goal is to eliminate upfront costs and expense on the part of the town so that the town doesn't go out of pocket either from its taxes or a tax increment or any other source. The town does not go out of pocket initially to pay for regional infrastructure, or for that matter, local infrastructure. And the long-term financial risk to the town should be eliminated. And frankly, I'll say virtually all risk, period, eliminated from a financial perspective to the town. So how have we done that? Moving on to slide 22. The financial commitment of Stagecoach in terms of sewer and water infrastructure. As I indicated, it's to pay the upfront cost to design, finance, permit, construct, install sewer and water, which includes the water and sewer lines, the interceptor, the force main, the pumping station. All of that at approximately $5 million that Stagecoach will install initially. Stagecoach has agreed in the annexation agreement and will pay. And I think that at this point in the town's history, I'm told it's unprecedented. We'll pay a $2,500 per unit fee per the annexation agreement, in addition to other fees. For Stagecoach La Plata, this equates to approximately $1.59 million, $1.6 million in cash that it will pay to the town at the time building permits are issued for each unit. Stagecoach will pay the town's $16,697 per unit major facility fee in addition to the annexation fee. That's the current amount set as of 2023. The town certainly has authority to set that fee from year to year. For Stagecoach La Plata, this equates to $10.62 million in financial payments earmarked to town sewer and water infrastructure. That's in addition to the $1.59 million. Just to explain just briefly what the regional or community infrastructure is on slide 23. You can see the dark green line. That's the line that would come from the town's infrastructure at Steeplechase and would run through and would be able to be connected to the Earnshaw development, which has a potential of 350 homes. So what that would do would be only to connect, that portion would connect the major developments of the Southwest Quadrant, and that's why it's termed as regional as opposed to local infrastructure. All of the light green lines are the local infrastructure. Now, when we say regional, what that means is that Stagecoach is going to size the facilities and the lines, both for water and sewer. They're going to size them to accommodate the remaining development in the Southwest Quadrant, including the Earnshaw property and Dolly Drive. And the reason for that, it's universally accepted planning in this country now, that where you are going to have a series of communities, a series of developments served by municipal infrastructure, that you don't balkanize it. I guess balkanize has a pejorative connotation from the troubles in the Balkans over the years, and actually that translates to sewer and water systems as well, in that that you don't construct a line that just serves Stagecoach, construct lines and facilities that just serve Steeplechase and just serve the Earnshaw property, because it increases significantly the operational and maintenance costs that the town has to bear. So from an operational and maintenance standpoint, from a planning standpoint, I will suggest to you that it's universally accepted to size infrastructure on a regional basis and not balkanize it. Now, the effect of that is that under the terms of this agreement, Stagecoach would be entitled to reimbursement of 35% of the regional infrastructure from the major facility fee fund as partial reimbursement for the sizing of the infrastructure to accommodate the entire remaining Southwest Quadrant. The town will still charge the major facility fee to the rest of the Southwest Quadrant. And frankly, the town will have a legal basis for doing so in connection with the regional infrastructure only if the town bears some of the capital costs of regional infrastructure. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a legal basis to require the remaining Southwest Quadrant to pay that portion of a major facility fee. The reimbursement from the major facility fee fund would occur only after the sewer and water facilities are accepted and placed in use by the town. The 35% figure is proportional with the rest of the Southwest Quadrant, meaning that 65% of the Southwest Quadrant is Stagecoach, and therefore Stagecoach would only be entitled to 35% of the cost. Essentially and conceptually, what we're saying is that Stagecoach would be reimbursed for oversizing the lines, for accommodating the rest of the Southwest Quadrant on a proportional basis. Now, let me ask you to turn back, and I'm sorry, there's one critical point I want to make here. The $5 million, which is our projected cost of the regional infrastructure, times the 35% means the town's reimbursement would be 1.75 million after it accepts the regional system. And if we turn back to page 22, the $2,500 fee results, which required under the annexation agreement, results in payments to the town of 1.59 million. So the town's reimbursement for that regional infrastructure, or to regionalize, oversize the infrastructure, the town's reimbursement for that would be almost completely covered by the amount of the annexation fee, which Stagecoach agreed to pay, which, as I indicated, I'm told is at this point unprecedented. In addition, though, if we're still on page 22, the town is going to retain the ability in the balance of the Southwest Quadrant to charge the major facility fee, currently set at $16,697, plus the balance of the Southwest Quadrant is also required to pay the $2,500 per unit fee. So the financial structure of this, we believe, and I think that the town staff negotiated hard on this. The financial structure is such that the town gains long-term benefits from Stagecoach that I described, and the town's financial stake and financial risk is virtually non-existent. That the developers are bearing the cost of infrastructure, and that is the short of it. On slide 26, this deals with the phasing that Stagecoach in phase A would only have 70 single-family dwelling units and 22 duplex for a total of 92 in phase A, and that so this would allow a very orderly construction schedule and orderly outgrowing of the community. The other phases could only proceed after detailed and final engineering plans are submitted. On page 27, slide 27, the point we want to make here is the town is not obligated to provide capacity to Stagecoach if no capacity is available. That's what this agreement provides. Although I'm told, and certainly Mr. Carroll can address this in more detail, that the town has sufficient capacity for Stagecoach, and the town has plans to expand its capacity because, frankly, being a priority funding area and being an area designated for development by both the state and the county, that the town has successfully added to its wastewater treatment plan on a consistent basis and anticipates doing so. But I'm told that capacity is currently available. The town is obligated only to give its best efforts to ensure that capacity is available. And the town may not give preference to other developers for the capacity that has been assigned to Stagecoach under the terms of this agreement. But the short of this point is that you do not have to be concerned and should not be concerned that the town is ever obligated to provide a capacity if for unforeseen reasons in the future it's not available. You have not assumed and that obligation, you've only assumed obligations that are reasonably achievable and foreseeable. So that concludes my presentation. I think we were very appreciative of the time that the town manager and the town attorney gave us in working this through. We think we've addressed all of the comments that have been presented to us effectively. If there are any other comments, we welcome and would like to address them from anyone. But like I say, we are as optimistic and bullish as we can be about Stagecoach. We think we have presented something that has been in the town's plans for years, is a vision of the town, and we think we can bring it to fruition in a really bucolic, effective way at this point. We thank you for your attention, and we have successfully eliminated financial risk to the town as a result of this development. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I'll open it to the floor for council. If you have questions.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have several questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fisher and Ms. Greer for your presentation. 2009 and 2016 comprehensive plans you're reviewing. That was interesting to me, especially from the county's perspective, since the county doesn't work with us on anything. And I can't imagine them assisting us with water when we're already struggling with future development. This has not been taken to the Planning Commission yet, right? Your preliminary plats are not?
Oh, no, we received a preliminary plan approval in 2022 last year. And I think it was just extended because we're trying to work through this agreement.
Okay.
We're in the process of engineering, but of course we need to resolve the water and sewer issues. It was approved June 7th of 2022 and extended by the Planning Commission on May 2nd, 2023 for another year.
Okay. Okay. And so when do you think you will have everything else to the Planning Commission? You're asking us to approve this agreement before you bring everything else to the Planning Commission. And with that being said, you're asking us not to consider any other developer that comes before us and gets everything in order in a timely manner, which we could not deny them, because they would come before us and they would be, again, adhering to our comprehensive plan and our town code and everything. And you're asking us in this agreement not to honor anybody else based upon the water capacity analysis that we currently have in place.
Actually, those are excellent questions, and your town attorney brought that concern right to our issue. So if you look at, because one of the concerns we had is that the town is working on an APFO agreement. It doesn't have it because the town has recognized that it is important for development to occur to have a water and sewer allocation process, but it's in that process. So this, with that in mind and looking at the allocations, your town attorney raised the exact point, and this agreement was modified to address that issue, which says, so what it says is that we have a phasing schedule.
Mhm.
We have to go get our first preliminary neighborhood, our first final plat, and I'm going to let Ed weigh in on this in just a second because he has the answer to the first part of your question about timing. And it says in phasing, and if you look at page 6 and 7 of the agreement, you only make those allocations available to us in a phased manner, but it starts with the first phase of the submission of engineering plans. So that was, we wanted to ensure there was a phasing of allocations over time because what the town explained to us in our conversations with the town attorney is we want to see the Stagecoach project move forward. We want to give you an incentive to move forward. We know you need these allocations to get your financing to move forward. We want to phase them, but we want to make sure it's equitable and that there is development occurring throughout the town in an even-handed manner. And if you don't use them, so for example, if you look at page 7, upon submission for the first neighborhood, the town makes available the first 92 EDUs. And then it goes for the next phases. Again, they make those available when the engineering plans are submitted. If we don't, so you make those the first allocations available or for whatever phase, if we don't apply for our building permit, those expire. So in other words, we're not locking up because that was the concern. We want to be consistent, conservative, allow development to occur in Stagecoach, but throughout the rest of the town. The point is, when we make those submissions, if there's no capacity, we have to wait. But if capacity is available, then we get that first. Would that be a fair? And I'm going to let Ed then speak in because I can tend to speak very quickly and let you talk about timing.
As far as timing, I mean, for submission of engineering plans, you're probably looking at 1 year for the first phase, and then each additional phase probably about 1 year apart. So you're looking at probably a 6 to 7 year timeframe for. I'm sorry.
Were you able to hear that or? Okay. So you're looking at all engineering plans probably in about a 6 to 7 year span for the entire project.
My next question is,
Okay, if I could, one more comment, as far as allocation policies and allocating sewer to permit larger developments to proceed, I think that's standard operating procedure for municipal government, because the problem is that a developer, to make something like Stagecoach happen, has to put a lot of, literally, as we've explained, millions and millions of dollars into the construction of infrastructure. And frankly, you just can't get it financed unless you have an allocation provision like Ms. Greer described. And that's why, I mean, the counties, every county I've worked with over the years has an allocation policy. And that is your call. I mean, the probably one of the most important functions of a mayor and council of a municipality is deciding on that allocation and which development should proceed and why.
I would like to ask Director Stahl to explain the balkanizing to me. I don't quite understand why we would overbuild capacity in the way that Mr. Fisher explained it. If you can explain that to me, and if that's something we would do in the Southwest Quadrant.
Certainly, if we know development is going to occur, we would size lines accordingly. And I would give you the example of the neighborhood of Steeplechase. We required the developer in that situation to build a 12-inch line all the way through Steeplechase. And so that will be the line that this neighborhood can actually connect into. However, I would remind the council that the development of Steeplechase paid for the upgrade of that 12-inch line and was not reimbursed by the town. It was just a requirement that they built the 12-inch line all the way through Steeplechase. And now it allows them to tie on to that line. I think in the regional approach, certainly that's the case, but in many cases, no different than what's happening with Pine Grove. We require them to upsize the lines to be able to bring other developments through that position. So when we built Agricopia, for instance, we made them build the lines to the edge of that development where section O is currently being built. And so the water lines, for instance, through Agricopia were sized large enough to be able to handle that which is there in section O what's now called Pine Grove. So there's many cases where we do this. It isn't something that's unusual in that, but it's usually done by the developer in that situation to accommodate future growth as required by the town.
So,
I would also indicate that when we looked at this development originally, that entire sewer trunk line that really goes through that they're calling the regional, um, uh, we don't believe that the topography accommodates that, and that there would have to be a second pump station down on the lower side to be able to then pump up. And I'm saying possibly on what they're calling the Earnshaw property, what used to be referred to as the Baldus Farm, would probably require a pump station, and that would be pumped up probably to either that pump station or farther on into the Steeplechase development.
So when Mr. Fisher says only Stagecoach annexation pays fees,
There was an agreement that as part of the original annexation agreement, when Carl Baldus brought the annexation agreement forward, and he was the original creator of that annexation, it was decided at that time, they put forth a proffer, and that proffer said that they would pay an additional $2,500 per lot as part of their proffer for annexation into the town.
so it's not something that the town, it sounded, the way they were saying it sounds like a penalty to me, like we were penalizing Stagecoach. And so that was something that was offered by the original developer, not something that, okay. So then my last question, I still yet don't understand. So if he's recommending balkanizing the water sewer connection, who pays for the additional, pumping station?
Clearly, as has been the case in past, I would say in the past, when this was originally proposed, I went to Mr. Earnshaw and said, "Do you want to be part of this sewer and water infrastructure?" And he said, I'm not moving forward at this point. I'll worry about that upgrade when I come. And so that's one of the things. There is no immediate plan for him to develop that property. It certainly should be taken into account, but the bottom line here is that I would generally say in the town's behalf, we don't generally go in there and say, we're gonna put up all this money up front to, for future development in the future. We have to do things as things come along. And so he certainly is aware of this project. He just said that he wasn't moving forward. He was concentrating on finishing Agricopia, and it would be some time before he would ever move over there.
Could I respond? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. First, I want to talk a little bit about the Pine Grove's well, let's talk about town planning. Towns plan, they plan for growth. And so expanding sewer and water infrastructure to accommodate planned growth, and the Southwest Quadrant is planned growth. Whether Mr. Earnshaw develops the Baldus property or somebody else develops it. In addition, you have existing growth on Dolly Drive that has certain covenants in its title requiring it to connect to the infrastructure in Stagecoach when that infrastructure is available. The alternative is, so what you do is, as a town, a prudent municipality or county government or state would say, we have annexed this area, we have planned it for growth. We may not know when growth will occur, but we know it will occur eventually. So we should plan for it now and size our lines and size our infrastructure to accommodate that growth. Because what's the alternative if you don't? If you say, only size your infrastructure to accommodate your growth, then you have, and this goes to a point that Mr. Fisher is going to talk about, is actually that's what creates a balkanized system. Then you create pump stations here, pump stations there, that over the long term are expensive to the town to maintain and to operate. And that's what you do not want. So instead, and let's just say, so instead you size your infrastructure in preparation of that anticipated growth. If you don't, you have what I just said. Option one, you have systems that aren't well matched together, that are expensive because ultimately the upfront cost or the construction may be paid for, but it's the town that's paying for the ongoing maintenance and operation. Or you say, well, you know, now that Earnshaw is going to develop, we want that infrastructure to come through Stagecoach. We want it sized. So now we've got to go through that community and rip up those water and sewer lines and replace them with lines. And that then creates a problem for you with that community. And that was the thought. And I think it's very important. Mr. Fisher was right. We're not here to review the past or cast aspersions, but that is what prompted the town to approach Stagecoach in 2015. Stagecoach was actually looking and exploring at how to bring infrastructure to its property. It was looking at the alternative of sizing that infrastructure just for its community. And the town prudently, it was the right, absolute right thought and concept. The town prudently said, we don't want you to do that because we don't think that makes sense. We think it makes better sense to plan for the anticipated growth of those adjacent parcels and to design and size your infrastructure in preparation. That is really the catalyst of starting us down the road of looking at community infrastructure, the USDA. In addition to it, the construct of that agreement from the very beginning was that there would be an upsizing of the infrastructure and there would be some reimbursement to Stagecoach for that upsizing of the reimbursement, which frankly, since we've mentioned Pine Grove does have an agreement executed on May 8th, 2008, which has a proportional cost-sharing component for the upsizing of community infrastructure. Finally, Stagecoach, in its annexation agreement, absolutely did proffer the $2,500. At one time, you know, I think about Pine Grove a lot because Pine Grove, I think, proffered a golf course at one point, and I think that they came to the town and asked the town to waive that proffer, and I think the town did, if I recall. I could be wrong, but I haven't, my memory sometimes fades, but I think that proffers are made and sometimes proffers are waived. What Stagecoach is saying is we have this proffer in the annexation agreement. We're paying the proffer of $2,500, and we're paying that in addition to the $16,000 plus in major facility fees. So in essence, we are more than paying paying for the cost of this community infrastructure. And I think it's important for the town council to remember that that's why your major facility fee exists. It actually is a designated fund that exists to cover the expansion of town infrastructure. So this agreement, we've tried very hard to make it consistent with the way Heritage Green was looked at, to make it consistent with good town planning, and to ensure at the end of the day that the monies that we're paying more than adequately cover the 35% reimbursement. In other words, there's an offset. Would that be fair, Mr. Fisher?
Well, I think that's right. My point was, ma'am, that balkanizing is a bad thing. That balkanizing is when you construct facilities just for Stagecoach, just for Steeplechase, just for the Earnshaw property. And what that does is it creates a lot of facilities that duplicate, are unnecessary. And who ends up holding the bag for balkanization? It's the town. The town ends up having to pay significantly increased maintenance and operational costs for having a balkanized system. And that's why we're proposing regional infrastructure. And in terms of the town's reimbursement for the regional infrastructure, my point only was, and I wasn't trying to go back on the $2,500. I mean, it certainly was a proffer. I was just pointing out that in terms of the overall financial package, it's a commitment that was made by Stagecoach and the other developers in the Southwest Quadrant at the time of the annexation, and that frankly covers the ability of the town to provide that regional infrastructure and not have a balkanized system. But also, my point was, then let's look at the balance of the Southwest Quadrant. You're going to be able to charge the $2,500 fee there because they agreed to it in the annexation agreement. And you're going to be able to charge the $16,000 or whatever fee is applicable of the major facility fee. So my point was just that from a financial standpoint, the town manager, the town attorney in consultation, negotiations with us, this is really a effective financial package for the town.
And I hear you, and tone and context says a lot to me. And when you kept saying only, it sounded as if it was a penalty that we were imposing on you. I didn't have the conversations with the town manager or the town attorney. You did. This is the first time I'm talking to you about this document. And so I'm trying to get an understanding from what I'm hearing to make sure. Director Stahl does all of our sewer water infrastructure. I wanted to hear it from him. What does that mean? How does that work? Is that something that we would do? And so I asked the question, not to go down the path of what Pine Grove or anybody else has done, but to answer the points that you made. And I was going to ask about the initially. You kept saying initially, well, you cleared that up at the end when you said we would pay this and then we would just be paying X number of dollars over the 35%. So I want to ask the questions. I want to have an understanding so that when I read this in private, I'm good. Hearing you, I wasn't good, and because I don't know if when the other developments, you guys have been a long time coming, and so to plan for what ifs in our current situation makes no sense to me. And so I just want to be able to think about it clearly. And so I'm asking my question.
No. I tell you, we are so appreciative of the chance to hear your questions about this construct. I mean, we obviously are very confident that we've put together a financial construct that is very beneficial to the town. And we just want a chance to explain it. And we really appreciate these questions because if you don't ask these questions, then we don't have a chance to try to make the matter clear. I mean, I've argued a lot of appellate decisions from the judges, and the worst thing in the world, if you've got a closed case, is to have them not ask you questions, because you want a chance to hear the questions.
So, Madam Mayor, one other question. Sure. I want to direct this to Mr. Gullo. Want to hear your thoughts on the agreement.
I'm going to give you the non-legal things that we should talk about in closed session. So I'll give you and I guess there's three ways in my head that I've analyzed. First is the town, not just this council, but councils before that have come up with a comprehensive plan for what you want to see the town to be. And the Southwest Quadrant always played into that. And, they highlighted some of this. So if you're talking about like the regional approach, this piece of the puzzle, if you want to compare it to a puzzle, gets you closer to realizing what you have said you wanted. And that's as far as like the infrastructure and the growth. But you also want one step further is when you wanted money to build your wastewater plant and your trunk lines, you went to the USDA for loans and you told them, just like anyone else, what are you going to use the money for? And they said, we want to use this to improve the Southwest Quadrant, and we're going to use the money from the Southwest Quadrant to pay you back. So the town over a period of time has represented that they want this to happen. So it seems like the agreement would carry that purpose out. And then there is a general development principle. Mr. Fisher talked on that. If you had a developer come in who wanted to build 30 lots, you would say, we're not going to get into all this because you should be able to do 30 lots. It's not a big deal. But when you have these big developments that are going to take 10 years to do, it's like baking a cake. I really only want the one piece, but I have to bake the whole cake to do it. And it costs a lot for them to do that. So as far as a development principle, it makes good sense for us to start entering into agreements. This would be, it's not our first one, but it would be our first one for us because we want to know what our obligations are and they want to know what their obligations are, even if it outlasts us. So in year 10, they want to know that they'll still be able to build if we have water sewer. So that makes sense. The final analysis is actually the deal. If you took all of the other stuff away and just said, what kind of deal is this? If you take the deal and you say, we're going to realize money that has been unrealized. It's in their annexation agreement, but that's not money in our pocket. And so we're going to realize these fees that the town at one point in time said they wanted, which means they must have needed. So we're going to get that kind of money. Then your major facilities fee, in short, was how much does everything cost to build for the entire town divided by the number of units it's going to serve. So while that looks like a lot of money, that's the pro rata share of stuff you said you're going to build. So you want that because you have to pay that money regardless of whether you get it in your hand or not. So that seems like a positive deal. The icing on the cake for us is that if you complete that piece of the puzzle, at some point in the time, since you exist forever, La Plata will be here forever, I think you called it the Earnshaw property or whatever, that may not build now, but 15 years from now, it might. And you'll still be able to recover funds from them to help offset what you gave away, if you look at it that way. So the deal in concept is consistent with all of the principles. The risk, which is we'll talk more about in closed session because deals are two-sided. The risk for you is you're promising that you're going to give capacity, water and sewer capacity, and you have to have it when they need it. That's not a big deal, right? We do that every day in our lives with like our mortgage payments. We promise the bank we're going to pay you every month, and we still have other expenses. But on the first of the month, you better have your mortgage payment. And so a lot of times when things are tight, you get nervous. Well, I would say that in La Plata, things aren't tight yet, but they could be. And so the question that we would have is, do we want to take on more that's going to make us feel strapped? And I think when you deal down and we talk about it in closed session, I think there's ways you can mitigate that.
And this is my absolute last question. It is my last question. The town is obligated to only give best efforts to ensure capacity is available. Who defines best efforts?
Well, when things go off the track, it'll be the court. But in our situation, what that would mean is if the town, we'll just use sewer because that's easy for me to deal with. If your sewer plant needs to be expanded by a percentage, and we never took any step to design it, to finance it, to do it, we didn't do our best effort. But if we did say, look, we designed it, and we went to the bank and the bank won't lend us the money, we used our best efforts. If MDE says, you did all these things, but we're not going to approve it, we used our best efforts. The reality is that's like a due diligence clause for us. And we don't really want to get into that issue. I think the concern for us on our side would be if you initiate this as a plan, you have to follow it through. You can't get into year 7, 8, I'm making those numbers up, and then decide this new shiny development is better than this development and we're going to divert things. It's what you do all along. You say things, you adopt things, and you follow through on things. And this is just different in the fact that it's the first one that's really come through with our team. Yes, and so when you ask me about this agreement, I mean, I want to clarify this is that I wouldn't take the blank copy up to you and say, would you please sign it tonight? Okay, I mean, right. The concept, the constructs, those are all things that I can put my hands around. But yes, there's language, best efforts. They use the word awarded instead of allocated. There's things in there that we could wordsmith. And I guess from my perspective, and I don't want to take their time up, but we were directed by you a month or two ago to try to reach an agreement. And we've tried to work that out. We've had a back and forth on once, but there are issues which we can talk about in closed session that someone needs to decide, are we going to do or not? That's not a me thing, right? That's a you thing. And that's, I think, where we are. And the concern that they have is, how do you get over the hurdle, whether you're doing this or not doing that? That makes sense.
Then for sure. All right, great questions.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation and the information. So I assume the agreement is the one that was sent to us in September? Okay, I wasn't clear to me, so thank you. So Mr. Stahl, isn't it a normal practice in any development that you would size it for future growth for
Sure.
adjacent properties? That's a normal course of action.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess I'll ask the staff this, has this agreement have any financial implications that should be reviewed by our finance director or not? Or should it be also reviewed by the planning director? I assume the planning director was involved in the review. And does it need to be reviewed by the planning commission?
I think the biggest review now from the legal perspective of me is that I think I have input from everyone, but there are pieces of the agreement that I don't know if they're right. I don't mean right or wrong. I just mean correct, because I don't know. And so that was circulated among the staff.
Okay.
And that's where there has been disagreement. You know, we're not
Sure.
all on the same page of that. But planning has provided the numbers. And again, I'm not going to get into the negotiating. We'll do that afterwards. There are some things that we need to deal with. But everyone really has dealt with things above board. It's not adversarial. You know, I mean, it's the idea of like, hey, these numbers aren't exactly what we see. And should this line be in this location? I don't know. So, but yeah, I believe
And-
everyone has had input.
And then, so how does it, so in a unknown scenario, what happens if we don't get MDE to sign off on a future groundwater appropriation permit, which we really don't have any control over, other than saying we have to apply for it?
Right.
That's under the state control, and I guess to some certain degree, Charles County, because there's a interplay with them. So I don't understand. I'm concerned about what would happen.
So you have to do that on the background of like numbers. So I'm going to make the numbers real simple. If you had enough water to allocate for 100 units and you promised them 70 of those 100 units, and all of a sudden we're at the point where we're saying, hey, MDE is not going to give us any more. 100 is it, which is unrealistic, but 100 is it. We can't then go back and say, sorry, you can't have that. You can't have the 70. We're obligated to give them the 70 because we have it. But let's say they needed 170. Well, we're not obligated to come up with some other 70 because we just don't have it. And we point to the fact that there's regulatory things beyond our control. And that is that. The term of art, I think, that I deal with developers is building, development, that type of work has inherent risk that they know. So you use the term unknowns. Those are known unknowns to them, and they have to accept those going into. And we're trying to minimize the unknown unknowns, which is what that agreement is supposed to nail down so that the risk is transferred to them because they get the reward.
And I do see that the draft agreement does make a reference to potential traffic improvements along Stagecoach Road, which is a county road, as we know, and then the possible intersection improvements at 301. And there's some proportional payment.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was brought, I mean, that was the discussion point. They included that. The genesis from that is this old annexation agreement that predates all of us. So when they came up, it's like, well, where is this coming from? And it's like, well, the prior property owners years and years ago agreed that this is how they would do it. And we thought it would be important to restate it here so that everybody knows what we're dealing with. And again, that's a known unknown because we don't know what state highway will say.
Correct.
But we wanted to at least acknowledge that there's a cost share involved in that.
And then finally, and again, this is out of our control per se, is school allocation. So that's unfortunately at their risk, what the county may or may not do with that.
And you know how your school allocation
Right.
policy is defined, but still kind of unknown, wishy-washy about do they accrue, don't they accrue, that type of thing. So the idea, and I dumb it down for my understanding. So when I try to explain it to myself is that if there is a line at the counter, I'm not taking the guy at the end of the line instead of the guy in the second in the line. And that's what they're trying to do. And I think it's important, the subject was talked about, it's probably appropriate here, is we've talked numerous times about an APFO
Mhm.
requirement, and we don't have one. And that's like the holy grail. Like if we get one, our problems will be solved. And what I've been preaching to the staff is that's the easy part, because that's the gate. The gate just says, if you don't have adequate public facility, pick the
Right.
thing, water, sewer, whatever, the gate comes down.
Mhm.
Okay. Pretend we're there right now. What's the first thing that's going to happen? The person's going to knock on the gate and say, so how do I get past this gate? What's the allocation policy for the water that you have, and how are you going to get it? That's what we're doing here. So this is very relevant in the fact that we want to do an APFO. We're going to have to figure out how we allocate water. And for
Mhm.
big projects that come behind it, you're probably going to have to do these types of agreements, because you're not going to be able to give them water on the spot, and you're not going to want to hold water. I think that Ed said it might be a 7-year thing. Why do I want to hold water for 7 years for houses that might happen in 10?
Mhm.
I want to use that water today and have more
Correct.
water at the time. So that's what the purpose is. So this fits in hand. It's too bad we don't have it worked out first, but cart's before the horse here.
And then, thank you, and I'll hopefully have more questions in closed session. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you both for your presentation. Thank you, Director Stahl, for your input, and Mr. Gallo for explaining a little bit further. Ms. Greer, I think you mentioned that Pine Grove did have an agreement as far as proportionality for the upsizing. And you held it in your hand and you kind of waved it a little bit. What is it? Yeah, what is it that you have? Because I think that the idea that I was curious about, which was proposed, is look, this is customary, right? That we're going to upsize developments for future growth. That's a cost to the developer on a significant level. What is it that you have there in front of you?
It's the utility installation and cost sharing agreement that the town entered into with Heritage Green Development. And you've heard Mr. Stahl, I think, speak about it before. And I want to, I have to make sure I apologize to Councilwoman Evelyn Bryant Ward if I get too passionate. I have been at this so long that's why we have Mr. Fisher speaking instead of me, because I tend to get very passionate about it. And this is not, it's not, they're not exactly the same because you have different types of infrastructure and different components. But when we looked at the cost sharing agreement and we saw the proportionality of, I think it's 70-35, and we saw what was being reimbursed, what was defined as community infrastructure, what was defined as for the development itself, we really tried to model our agreement after that. And, it's just ironically, I happened to be here, I think it was February 28th of this year, and you had the Heritage Green Special Taxing District in front of you for a briefing and then to establish a hearing date on it. And I enjoyed that presentation, and this agreement actually was referenced in that agreement as something that had been negotiated by the town and how it was a really good deal for the town in apportioning the cost. And here, I see the same sort of apportionment in light of the fact that between the major facility fee and the 2,500. Frankly, your community infrastructure that you're reimbursing us for is more than covered by both. More than covered. I think we're talking 11 million between the major facility fee and the payment of the 2,500. You're talking close to $11 million when the town's portion of the on-site defined as community infrastructure, which is again, those main lines that you see. When it's, I think the cost was what, if we go back to slide,
Well, it's,
I'm gonna,
right, I think it's slide 22. The town's current major facility fee is $16,697. The $2,500 fee, which Stagecoach has agreed to in the annexation agreement and proffered to the town, is in addition to that. So per unit, it's, I'm going to show bad in my head math, but it's, it's approximately $20,000 per unit. The town's reimbursement would be a total of 1.59 million. So the amount that the town's reimbursing you pales in comparison to the amount that's contributed overall. So it's right. The reimbursement would be that's correct, ma'am. 1.75 would be the reimbursement. The total of the $2,500 fee would be 1.59 million, and the total, as Ms. Greer indicated, of the major facilities fees would be 10.62 million. But the point I was trying to make was that the 2,500 in and of itself covers the town's reimbursement, and I really think that balkanization is a bad thing, and that it's worth the town's while to have regional infrastructure as provided for in the Heritage Green Agreement. And that it does give you the ability down the road. I mean, everything would be financially viable. In fact, frankly, there would be no financial risk if we stopped at Stagecoach. But there's no indication it's going to stop at Stagecoach because there are 350 potential prime units out there. And when it does extend to the Earnshaw property, and when Dolly Drive is connected, we're talking about additional revenues at a high level. And that's why I say, I think without any exaggeration, that this is a financially effective, financially viable arrangement for the town with virtually no risk.
and the one thing I want to add, and you can tell me not to,
Oh, go ahead.
is that it also covers, frankly, your repayment of the USDA loan. And we know from the minutes, I know it's no secret that we did a Public Information Act request and got the records from the USDA as well as the town. And one of the discussions between town staff and USDA was that the USDA loan was, again, to open the southwest quadrant. That was the purpose. It was the town from the very beginning has always said, now, Sue, this cannot be for one developer. If we do this as the town and we extend our bonding authority, it has to be for the public, which means to open the entire southwest quadrant, which was right of the town. That's exactly the right thinking. And that is what was represented to USDA. And when I looked at the minutes of the meetings between USDA and the town, when the town decided to shift the alignment, the conversations were, because again, going back in history, I think sometimes at night I'm going to go to sleep and dream about special taxing districts, and that'll put me to sleep. That we don't need to do a special taxing district on Stagecoach. We'll shift the alignment, but we're okay because the payment from Stagecoach of the 2,500 plus their major facility fee is going to more than pay for the debt service of the USDA loan and to repay it. So I think that's also something that is significant to the town. To get there, we want to get there. We want to make good things happen, but to get there, as Mr. Gullo said, we have to have an agreement that is that we know we have the entitlements to move forward, but you as the town know that you're not at financial risk, and we've done everything we can to do to ensure that you're not.
Thank you. So I don't think there's any question that any of us think that balkanization is bad, right? Or that upsizing is good. And I appreciate the background too, especially the last portion, which I think we'll probably get into a little bit later. Director Stahl, as to the potential need for a second pump station in that area, is that anticipated with growth beyond Stagecoach or as presented at a certain phase of what's been presented? I wouldn't anticipate in the first phase potentially, but is that only with further development with, you know, for example, the Earnshaw property at some point?
Well, let me just preface by saying it's been very hard to make a judgment on this because we don't have sewer and water plans in front of us. We're making a decision based on a preliminary plan, and it doesn't even take into account topography in the situation. Pump stations aren't based because we just want to put a pump station in and put it in there. Pump stations are put in place because of topography. And topography on this site was tough. Before I came to the town of La Plata, I was involved in this property as a manager for this project at a local engineering company. And, you know, I remember that there were 2 pump stations on this site. This isn't about, you know, my job has never been, you know, to decide what happens and what gets built. It's about facilitating whatever gets built and making sure the infrastructure is correct. And in this situation, I really don't have anything to make these judgments. I do know that property pretty well. And from the topography standpoint, you know, trying to put gravity sewer to Dolly Drive, and I'd ask Ed in the situation, I don't believe that it would be possible to gravity sewer Dolly Drive, for instance, over that hill and then into Steeplechase to get over to. So I believe that at some point there will be a second pump station, and it's not till we get into design of the actual sewer and water that a lot of these things can be really put out there. And so it is difficult to make those kind of calls at this point, and that's what I've been pointing out. And
Actually, Mr. Stahl, I have looked at it, the topography. I can get it to work with 1 pump station. And we did some detailed analysis actually looking at it, but you are correct. And that is the fact that, you know, engineering plans will be coming to the town of La Plata for opportunity for review as the project goes along. You know, it is our hope that through doing the community infrastructure that we could actually gravity sewer from the Earnshaw property line, Dolly Drive, back to a pump station that's located in Stagecoach. I did look at 2 pump stations originally when we filed the original USDA application, but I've also looked at other internal alignments within Stagecoach. I believe we can do it with 1 pump station, which would be a savings, you know, for maintenance with the town.
And Eddie, just for their clarification, at what elevation would those gravity sewer lines at the edge of the property be? I mean, I think we understand you see there would be another pump station on Baldus property.
Yeah, it is possible that there would be a requirement for a pump station on the on Baldus. That is very possible. It is also possible the gravity portion of Baldus, but maybe not the entire project, or Earnshaw, but not the
I
entire.
haven't seen it, and that's what I'm saying. I haven't seen those. The last ones I've seen had 2 pump stations.
And if I could just, and Mr. Stahl knows I've, you know, and I think that Mr. Gullo could probably affirm this as well as Mr. Fisher, negotiated when I was with the county, several reimbursement agreements or cost sharing agreements, and I've seen various structures of those agreements. And I have to say that in my experience, over the years doing that, we've never had the engineering plans in when we did the concept or the construct of the agreement. In the agreement, the town it's always been the concept. Is this concept good? Then the engineering plans come in, and the engineering plans are subject to town review and approval. So I can't just go build whatever I want. It's subject to town review and approval. This gives the developer the assurance that the concept is acceptable to the town. We'll have to submit that. And with Mr. Carroll, Mr. has had a great deal of experience with water and sewer design within the town. In fact, the town is offering on Mr. Carroll and his company for just this type of analysis and work. So he also is incredibly familiar with it. Do you want to add to that, Kurt? Because I don't want to. I want you all to. I've just never seen engineering plans come along with an agreement. They follow.
Yeah, I've been involved with infrastructure agreements at the county level for many years. I've never seen detailed engineered plans available at the time that the developer is granted allocations in an infrastructure agreement, and when at the time when the concept, the financial concept, is agreed upon and approved. I've just never seen such detailed plans available at that time.
Let me add, since we did talk about this, that from the perspective of our negotiation in the agreement, it doesn't matter. Because the 35% is not 35% of the cost of the line versus the cost of the line plus 2 inches. 35%, I mean, that's the number we're using. That is based on the division of the number of units that are going to be served. So they're going to pay 65% of whatever the cost is of the community. And if you have to do 1 pump station, they're paying 65%. If it's 2, it's 65%. So that's why the agreement was be able to say, well, we're dividing it per unit. Because the other way, which is what we do other times when we actually have infrastructure we're never going to put in, we're going to say, well, an 8-inch line costs $100 and a 12-inch line costs $200. And the delta between that is what we're going to pay back. But in the concept phase, it's too hard to do. So that's why the percentages were used.
So just for clarity, I asked about that because I know that I'm on the planning commission. I want to know where you were. You had come before us for the preliminary plat, and at one point I know that you were about to run out of time and that was going to start things all over. That was the point of that question.
I appreciate that. And really we've been working diligently. And Mr. Carroll's been working on engineering, but we can't until we get this settled. It's very difficult to move forward. And we've been trying. I think I really love your town attorney because he really negotiates hard for you. And he probably gets tired of seeing my name pop up on his screen. I think when he started with you, with the town, he said that this is the town council would like to see this resolved. They would like to see the project go forward in a way that protects the town, allows you to go forward, but protects and benefits the town. And we have really been working quite hard since that time. And the town did say, I mean, in fairness to the town, you said, in order for us to really get here, we want to know that Stagecoach is going to be real and that you're advancing. So Stagecoach stepped back from the agreement and it went through the process of getting that preliminary plan approved. And since that time, I think we've been working very diligently to try and get an agreement that protects the town and allows the town to go forward and is consistent with the town policies.
Yes, thank you.
Last but not least, I will speak from my heart since I have been, first time I think I had you present in front of us was in 2017, and you made us close our eyes and we took a trip down this wonderful Stagecoach, and I would love to see Stagecoach come to fruition. As it was stated, we have said it all along in our comp plan that this is the part that we want. When we annexed it in, we as in the town 30 years ago, it was a vision. This vision is now closer to becoming real with the USDA loan. the big thing, and this is where I'm still new on council. I don't have the 22 years that Mayor Ekman had, but why are we seeing this? This should have been, we got the annexations, we've got the planning commission looking at this, and you know, I'm the biggest cheerleader here for all of our development. We should have a complete agreement here. This should not be we're not the experts. Our staff's the expert. And so what I'm hearing without you saying is you're here to kind of give us a little, something's not going on. And that is kind of lighting a fire under us. Is that fair to say?
We think we had an agreement. We think this is a complete agreement consistent with, practice throughout the state. We had detailed discussions with the town attorney. We assumed that he was conveying the comments of the director and all members of the staff. The town manager participated, the director of planning and zoning participated. We are ready to hear additional comments and respond to them. We received comments through the county attorney, and we made material changes to this agreement in that process. We are ready to continue to negotiate and respond to all comments if there are additional ones, but we thought we were done. Frankly, we thought after having these detailed meetings and responding to all the comments that we had an agreement that was ready for approval. And it's an agreement that it's not out there somewhere. It's not vague. It's not incomplete. We think it's consistent with what you would see throughout the state, municipal and county agreements.
And it's sorry to interrupt, this September one that was emailed to us, that's the one that you want the bow put on. That's the final one with all the comments, or has there been comments done and we have not seen what you think is a done agreement?
Well, we think the last agreement transmitted was the agreement that we thought was final. Now, but I'm not saying we're in here to be acrimonious or bellicose, or we appreciate the town attorney for his thoughtful comments and frankly his knowledge of this area and professionalism. And we're ready to continue to talk if necessary. But frankly, we think we got there. And we think that the staff, the technical sewer and water comments had been filtered through the town attorney and town manager. That's where we thought we were. So we're ready to continue, but we sure think we're there. We'll continue because we're not the decision makers. So we'll listen to you and we'll continue the process. But frankly, we started this really intense process in May, I think, and after this council gave and the mayor gave direction, we had some detailed conferences after August. So if there's something else that hasn't been raised, raise it. Let's talk about it and get it done. But this 2015 is when this process began to move forward with Stagecoach, and I believe the explanation I gave as to the importance of Stagecoach that this town has seen for a generation. And this is significant. This is going to enhance the vitality and the effectiveness of this town tremendously. And this town, it's not Fisher saying that, it's the comprehensive plan saying that. And what we're envisioning really is a bucolic, high-end community. We're ready to get it done. We're ready to get it done now. And the reality is you don't build huge developments without entitlement allocations. The example of, first come, first serve for somebody said 5 units or 10 units. That's right. I mean, if you've got 5 or 10 units, those types of developments, you see first come, first serve. People don't have these allocation agreements. But for large developments, they will not go forward without entitlement allocations. They will not be financed. Millions of dollars won't be spent, and they won't go forward on the basis of maybe we'll have it, maybe we won't. And that is not just La Plata. That's Charles County, which had a sewer allocation policy. I think I actually litigated a sewer allocation policy in the early 90s. It's every major municipality or county that has major developments enters into either DRRAs or infrastructure agreements, and they allocate public facilities. That is a reality, which I think Mr. Gullo will agree with entirely. In fact, I look at it this way. I mean, the allocation of public facilities is one of the most important things that you all do. To me, it's like the Congress approving the Defense Appropriation Act. I mean, where you're going to have growth, your future is all tied up in public facility allocation. We think we got there on an agreement that we think is financially beneficial to the town. And we're ready to receive more comments, but on the other hand, we're ready to go.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the experts sitting there that will, we're the policymakers. We are going to rely on our experts that are here.
And I just, I just, out of deference to my client, and I just want to say again, we, Mr. Gullo, I've been at this since 2015. I have a whole folder here of all the various agreements that we've sent. We've tried different constructs. We've really tried hard to respond every time the town said, you know, we may, quite frankly, we may not have liked it when the town changed its mind, but we tried to adapt to the change in mind and adapt our project to it and adapt our agreements to it. The most productive time we've had, I think, in getting is really been since your town attorney, Mr. Gullo, got involved and started trying to help drive it. He's transmitted comments, but I think he can only transmit information that he receives. We feel confident that this is a great agreement. I think what my client's looking for, they know that you're anxious to bring resolution. They're anxious for finality and resolution to this issue, so that we can move forward and the town can move forward, really to recognize the benefits of the project.
So you asked, how do we get here? Type of thing. First of all, I want to clarify that when Mr. Fisher says county attorney comments, he means me. He does not mean to demote me like that every time he says that.
I have spent my life around
Right.
too many county
Exactly.
attorneys, and I'm really glad to work with the town.
So there's no county attorneys involved here, but after our last closed session, we did wholesale changes to the agreement and we marked it up and sent it back. So what you received is not what it was then. And they returned this to us and took out, and the agreement wasn't, this is what we want. It was, this is what we don't want. Send us some more stuff, which is what we have. And at that point in time, the staff again circulated it. And there is disagreement on the staff level about the contents of that. And so we have intended to talk to you about that in closed session. And I communicated that because they are on a timeline. I mean, they want things, why isn't this happening? And it put us in a situation where if we're talking about this in closed session, I do not feel that it is right for me to advocate for them, right? So when I said I want to talk to them, my client in closed session, but I don't want to be the one that says all the great things about the agreement because that's not my place. And so it was like, we want to come to the council. And I said, that's perfect. You can tell them all the benefits. And then when I get my client alone, I'll be able to say, this is what's going on behind the curtain. And you notice there's not a lot, but there are some things, and we are at an impasse internally as to what to send back. And that's why they believe they're ready to go. And they're not shocked, because if we were ready to go, we would have said, I think Brent told you before, when there's an agreement ready to go, we'll give you an agreement. This didn't come this way because we have a little thing. So this is why they had the opportunity to lay out all their concerns. Our concerns are more about general things that we'll get into when we close the session.
I appreciate you refreshing our memory about what this project will look like, and the open space and all of that, the amenities there. So that's the things that I have to defend, because most people, most residents don't really care about what's underneath the ground. It's the aesthetic. So I appreciate you refreshing my memory on that one. Councilwoman Brightmore.
I'm sorry, I'm not the mayor. I don't do things from my heart. It has to make business and logical financial sense to me. And our attorney did just what we asked him to do. When they came in September, it was not ready to go. And we asked them to go back, hash it out, work it out, and bring us back something that makes sense for both of us. So they did what we asked them to do. And I'm glad it was you guys hashing it out and the town staff and not us. And so now we're ready to look at what you guys have and how it will work for both of us. You know, so make decisions from your heart, make a huge mistake. I want to make it from logic and data and everything that we have in front of us so that it's a solid decision and we can move forward.
And just point of clarification, when I said it's from my heart, meaning that it's been annexed in, we want the property, and we want the development. Obviously, it's got to be a good fit for us. So you all have worked very hard. You have come in front of us 3 councils now, really promoting your development down there. And I appreciate that. And once an agreement is worked out that is acceptable to both parties, that's when we'll start moving forward again. But I appreciate that. Any other questions from council? Any closing remarks from our attorney or town manager? Well, thank you all very much for being here. Appreciate that very much.
And thank you.
Thank you.
These are
Thank you
tough
for your time.
agreements and appreciate the details.
All right, moving on to amended 4.3, we will have the captains come down here and give us a briefing on what they are asking for.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to present this to you guys. So basically, right now, it's pretty probable that we have an officer that may be leaving us. This is on, right? Okay. I can't really get into why he's planning to leave, but it's for personal issues at this time. And there is a time crunch on it because the Anne Arundel Police Academy is starting in early November. They have opened up a slot for us for a 3rd officer to go into the academy. If we do this now, they're not charging for the tuition for the officers right now. After January of 2024, any officer that we do send through the academy, it'll be a $4,500 charge. Which isn't unreasonable. That's typically what most of the academies would charge us, but up until now, it's been free of charge as long as we supply a firearms instructor from time to time at the academies or any other kind of educational stuff for the academy. What's more important about it is if we were to get the officer in this academy, you're basically looking at we would have him in field training within around 7.5 to 8 months, which means he's out of the academy, getting trained up and possibly on the road within the year. If we prolong that and wait until the new year of the next academy, then we're looking at anywhere from a year to 18 months from now for that. Typically probably 18 months just because he's got to go through the academy, which is nearly 8 months, and then get him on field training, which is another 4. So, and that's with the wait time in between. So right now, our background unit has gotten 1 applicant all the way through the process. He feels that he would be a good candidate for the police academy and for the department. Aside from that candidate, the agency only has 1 other person in the background process with, they still have quite a few phases to get through to even make it to that point where they become a viable candidate. Aside from that, we're just requesting that we hire 1 above the staffing level at this time. If this officer were to leave, I think it will more than self-correct itself by the end of the year as far as for budgeting purposes. That's a little out of my wheelhouse, but it's my basic understanding that that's how it would work out as far as budget. I'll let Captain Bagley speak on some of the problems that staffing shortages have created for us.
As Captain Orr stated, this 1 officer has indicated that he is looking to leave the agency. He's actively in the process with another agency right now. I don't know where exactly in the process he is, but he did indicate that he is in the process. there's rumors that we have another officer who is applying in another agency too. We've heard that from 2 other officers. So there's potential that we could be losing 2 officers here in the very near future, which is obviously going to put us behind a hole. With the increase in the call volume going on in the town, with sicknesses and things like that, we've been at very critical staffing levels here lately. I have 2 squads, 2 out of the 4 patrol squads right now are operating at the minimum amount of officers that we can have on the road right now. They're both shorthanded. I actually even had to cover a shift Friday. I worked from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the road to help cover shift. I haven't worked a road in 3.5, almost 4 years. So we were in some dire straits the other day. So, and I've spoken with the lieutenant with the Anne Arundel Academy. He did offer us this third spot if we needed it. We need it at this time. We think so. The 2 that are getting ready to start this academy, it starts November 9th. They had to report last week to get fitted for uniforms and equipment and everything else. So we're already kind of behind schedule if we were going to add this third person. We'd have to do it in the very next couple of days. We'd have to get them up there to get their equipment and things on those the needed things they need. There's some wait time too, as far as like the ballistic vest. That's a couple months by the time they get fitted for that to come in. So we're on a little bit of a time crunch right now. Like I said, staffing levels have been very low here lately, just because of personnel matters and illnesses and leave and stuff like that. So we'd really like to get this extra person in, because it would be the 2 that are getting ready to start the academy now, and this person, it's 7.5, 8-month academy, and then 3 months of field training. So we're looking at almost this time next year when they're operating on their own. If we delayed that any further, it would be 1.5 years or more before we got another officer on the road. And currently, I don't know of any other academies that are planning to start in the next 6 months either.
If we were to the officer above what you have, when do we start paying his salary? Upon hiring?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And so what happens if this officer does not leave? What happens if he doesn't get accepted in the other academy? And now we're stuck with the new officer and the officer that was threatening to leave?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that was the HR director's concerns as well. Unfortunately, we can't really forecast that, but it's very probable that this officer is going to leave. I don't know if it even matters whether he gets hired by another agency or not. I believe he is planning to leave regardless. I can't forecast that 100%, but I can say it's probable at this point.
And looking at the cost right now for your department, I mean, it's up there. And a salary plus fringe is going to be a lot that we haven't budgeted for. And
We do have the HR person on.
And finance.
Director, and we have Director Kennedy. What? Can you give us some insight, please?
So, yeah, I mean, my concerns were the same ones that Councilwoman Evelyn Ward had. And my concern is, yeah, we don't have any kind of commitment that any officers are leaving. It's rumors and hearsay. And in my experience, you know, if I had a dime for every time somebody was rumored or threatened to be leaving and doesn't, I wouldn't have to work right now, quite frankly. So my concern is that, you know, the same thing is this officer doesn't get accepted back wherever they're hired, wherever they're being interviewed for or trying to get into, and then we're stuck with that same officer, plus now we're paying salary and benefits and workers' comp and all those other costs that are associated with having a new hire. We may be saving a little money because we don't have to pay for training this cycle in November. But what happens if in a couple of months this officer doesn't leave? I'm going to have to riff somebody. Like I'm going to have to do we have to terminate somebody to get back down to our numbers if they don't leave? And then also, you know, I would feel better about this decision if we had the commitment from the officer. And what I mean by that is a formal resignation letter that says, it is my intent to leave the agency on November 30th. And then that way we have the ability anytime in that notice period that we could accept the resignation. So if we did get another candidate in and we did send them, then we could accept the other officer's resignation effective immediately. Or we could wait it out till the end of the notice period, you know, whatever makes more sense. But without a resignation letter in hand, then that officer never has to leave, right? We have no way to do that. And now we're stuck with potentially somebody new that we would have to terminate because, you know, now we're above our head count. And that's not a good look when we're trying to keep and hire people. You know, when they're like, oh, well, they'll hire you, but they'll just terminate you again later. Like, so I'm also concerned about what does that, you know, what kind of message does that send out there, you know, especially in an agency that's very difficult to hire for, you know, in the first place.
And I have a question. Has this been run through finance?
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't we couldn't make a decision tonight without amending the budget? Is that not?
That's correct.
But here, the problem is we are already using fund balance to cover operating costs. That's in our budget. So if the officer doesn't quit, you're either gonna have to use fund balance to continue covering it. And what are we gonna do the next budget year? Are we gonna continue this on?
And we haven't seen any, I mean, I don't know if you have any figures as far as costs, what it would cost to add on the new officer, or obviously you said training's been waived, but the cost of salary, benefits and all of that. So how much are we projecting to go over budget? We haven't seen any of that. And I know we'd have to amend the budget and maybe that's not ours to decide, but to have a complete package instead of saying we've got a person, and I understand how important it is to get someone into the academy. And especially the first step is if they pass the background test, background check, because that has been the obstacle that stood in many of your ways on that one. Any other questions with that?
Yeah, and I want to thank our folks that we didn't think were going to be available tonight. Thank you for hopping on the Zoom call. I didn't think we could even discuss any of this stuff, so thanks for being available. It sounded like it did go through finance, so do we have some idea of numbers? Because that would be your question, right? Not necessarily theirs. That's your expertise, right?
So,
right.
Sorry, I can't hear Karina if she's speaking,
Oh,
but
she's coming on up.
perfect.
Typically, you're looking at an officer between 50 and 60,000 annually. That's the beginning salary for them just coming on board. Then benefits are going to run, but depending on what they choose, you're probably looking at between 23,000 if they choose the family plan. And then there's the uniform. There's the other costs regarding yeah, well, you'd have to add a new vehicle unless, so there's other costs involved in this. And like I had said before, we are already budgeted to use fund balance to cover operating costs. And part of our operating costs include, or revenue included the speed cameras. That has not generated any revenue yet, so we still haven't gotten that stream of revenue to help cover some of the two officers or two positions that we added in the beginning of the budget. So my concern, I guess the same concern that Monica has, is it's fine if the officer was we knew 100% they were going to leave, then that's fine, but we don't know that.
Understood. And Ms. Kennedy, hopefully you haven't had a lot of people say they're threatening to leave under your watch and lots of dimes so that you don't have to work anymore. But I think obviously it puts everybody in a weird position, right? Because can't have anyone lean on a resignation per se, right? And if we've got a large window of time where we could be without two officers, does that put us in a weird spot or a bad spot in paying overtime for other officers to cover if we're down? Is that a
It
consideration?
could be, but it could also offset not having that other officer there.
And the
So,
other the other thing to consider here too is if this officer has already told you that their intent is to leave, then it should be no problem to say, please put that in writing. Because if they've already committed to that and told you that verbally, that their intent is to leave, then asking them to put it in writing should not be an awkward conversation. It should just be, great, I understand that that's your intent, please let's have something formal for, your employee records and something so that we can start that, offboarding process if we needed to.
And that doesn't put us or them in a precarious situation because that's already been relayed, at least in part, from an HR perspective, from your experience.
What do you mean? By asking them to put something in writing that they've already verbally agreed to?
Well, if they've alluded to it, not verbally agreed to it.
See, but alluding can be anything. I can tell you from personal experience, I've probably tried to quit my job 100 times and had moments where I'm like, I'm done, I can't take it, I can't be here, and I put out applications. But I find myself at the same job 13 years later. So,
You've tried
alluding
to
and rumors is not a way to make a decision on how we're staffing our people.
Okay.
If he's not committing, then he's not leaving.
Is that, I mean, you hear what she's saying as far as being able to get a resignation, a formal letter of some kind. Is that within the realm of possibility?
Yeah, I understand that. And that's something that we can talk to him about. One thing I did want to say was that these aren't just hearsay and rumors. We don't operate under the guise of rumors and hearsay. This is something that the officer told us that he's planning to leave. So trying to get out in front of things and keep our staffing up to the optimal numbers because we're already short staffed with people out on maternity leave and other reasons. So basically we're trying to get out in front of this one. Otherwise we're going to be operating even more with a skeleton crew. So we're not just making a rash decision where we heard somebody say, oh, he might be leaving or this. I mean, we go through that yearly anyways, but this was an actual statement to our command staff that he was planning on leaving. I can't really get into it on why right now, but it's at this point, we'll just say it's for personal reasons.
Right. But so if he's already told you verbally, then he can put it on paper.
I'm sure he can.
And
I just wanted to point one thing out. Even if this officer leaves and you have to pay other officers overtime, you're still paying for this other officer for a year, 18 months. That's not going to be on the road. So you're still going to be paying extra anyways, either to cover this officer or to cover the overtime for the officer, for the other officers.
So, yeah.
Because he's not physically.
And I just want to make clear that I understand and agree with the concerns of Councilwoman Bryant Ward and Madam Mayor and our staff in that when we're dealing with the budget and we're stewards of the taxpayer money and now we're balancing against public safety interests and everything else. So, I mean, from my perspective, I think Ms. Kennedy's suggestions are wise as to getting something formal so that we're not, burning through stuff that we don't have and going too far ahead. And perhaps that's something that can be readdressed soon.
So is it something that, Mr. Manuel, that if they go to this officer, have something in writing, commit, and I guess this might be a legal question as well, Mr. Gallo, that they say they're leaving November 30th, just throwing out a date. That's their resignation, like we put in for 2 weeks, they're putting in for 6 weeks, that's when they're leaving. Can they come back next week with a letter in hand and we've got, so it's committing, either you leave or you're fired on that day. I don't know if it's that, if they're putting something, it's gotta be a firm thing because it affects everything else. Is that possible? because the date is not until November 10th to perhaps get a candidate there.
Monica may want to answer that, but my opinion is if you accept that resignation, then it's final.
I mean, they can't, so when you
They
accept that resignation,
Can't
you,
reverse their decision.
no, you can't rescind, but they can give you a date as November 30th is my last date. And that's
Yes,
what, so
believe that
if
to
they
be.
don't actually walk out the door on the 30th, it is, then you're fired. I mean, that, well, they quit, but
Right.
whatever.
Right, it would be treated as a voluntary termination. They
Okay.
said that, they indicated they were leaving on that date. We'd out process them just like anybody else that would quit.
So with that, and I guess the two departments that are directly impacted other than the police department, if the letter in hand comes next week, would that ease the burden, I guess, for financial as far as overage too of personnel and hopefully get them into the academy? Would all those three gel? Would it work?
If that was the way you guys want to accept it, I would say yes, based on what was said here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because-
it would definitely make me feel more comfortable as far as, especially from a payroll and a budget standpoint as well, to know that we're going to minimize any kind of overlap and that we adhere to our head count.
And it puts a rumor to reality. I mean, whether or not that is what this individual wants to do. But would it be, captains, would it be possible for this individual to still get into the academy if they're not getting outfitted this week and they have to wait until next Tuesday?
Cutting it close, we could probably still manage it, but we're crucial crunch time. I mean,
If they know your situation, they're willing to hold the slot. If you say you just need council approval based on these other two elements, would they, since it's not beginning until November 10th, but I do understand there is the prerequisites in order to get ready for that. Is it possible? Because we're looking at probably the next week is the 24th. And so you've got 7 days there. So you have 17 days before this individual would actually enter the academy. Is that enough time? I don't know.
I can't answer that either. I'd have to speak with the academy staff, honestly.
Any other?
Yeah, just a question. How many officers did we have in 22? How many full-time officers did we have in 2022?
Budgeted or?
So I know last year in 23, we had two less because we
Not
added
fiscal
two.
year, calendar year.
Yeah. I don't know what 22 was. I can go look.
Because you're saying we're short-staffed, and I thought we added officers. And I was really happy when we added career and the other.
The Jacobs?
Well, you got to remember, we have 2 in the academy right now. So right now we have 2 in the academy and 2 waiting. So that's 4 right there. So that's an entire squad for us right there that are in the works. But that's the problem. We're always, as a police department, and this is nobody's fault, but we're always playing catch up to get our squad staffed and, get specialties filled. But at the same time, as we grow, we're also using positions for civilian positions too, because there's just so much that they have to do as well, especially with the new mandates by the state as far as like administrative charging committees, getting paperwork to the training commission, all the new training that has come with police reform, and just even some of the changes in the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights. Although they have been, changed in the legislature, we still operate under those the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights in our general orders. So, and that's another reason why it may not be practical for us to request a resignation letter at this time.
And also, I'm
The
sorry,
other two officers come out of the academy.
the 2 that are in the academy right now, I'll remind you, 2 are filling spots of 2 officers that left.
Right, but when do
So
they come out?
they graduate December 13th, and then they're going to have about a 3-month field training. So we're looking at March.
So the only way that you could really get ahead is if you hired fully licensed and officers from a different, if you poach them. It's kind of like someone poached one of ours.
Kind of. Yeah, it's a tough thing to do right now.
Unfortunately, I don't have any
Because you'll.
certified applicants right now that
Yeah,
have expressed an interest in the coming here, so.
You will always play catch up because you have to send them to the academy, or you could send them to a 6-week compliance if they have.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a given anytime unless you're overstaffed with those in the academy and working at staff, because right now, aren't you you're 100% staffed, as you said, because you're asking for an overage and you've
Yes,
got
ma'am.
four in the academy and you've got 2 waiting to go, right?
No, 2 in the
Two in the
academy
academy.
and 2 waiting to go. And then this opportunity presented itself for this third to start in this new academy class.
Okay. Any other? So, Mr. Manuel, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Next. What is the next step?
The next step, as far as the decision, would be whether council wants to move. And, obviously you can do one of 2 things. One answer is always no, that you don't want to go above and beyond. And the other answer is, could be press for the letter. Or the third answer could be, as we feel comfortable with you to move forward. And we will trust that this officer or another officer will leave the organization and will be square.
So hearing from our department heads, they do not feel comfortable adding addition without a commitment. I know that's going to be a tough call on your part. I would like to see a letter in hand next week and have our department heads be more comfortable with the decision. But I will entertain a motion from anyone here if you feel differently, or any further discussion.
Is that a motion that you're making, or you want us to make the motion or comment?
I'm just telling you how I feel. I can make the motion. I move that we.
You were looking for a decision. We want a decision on the proposal, right?
Yes.
And so you gave us potentially 3 options. There could be a number of varieties. Right.
All right. What I am proposing is that we get a letter indicating that this person truly is going. A resignation letter with a date on it to come back next week so that we can have our department heads here give us a briefing, but move forward with that. Are you okay with a resignation letter?
I will say, if we get the letter, I don't think we have to come back to council.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be great if this communication could occur between the departments.
I would prefer that
Yeah,
myself
yeah.
too.
So, yeah, I agree with that.
So, Ed, consent.
I would agree with that and again, I fully understand your predicament. I mean, I understand that, but I think we need documentation to really be safe. And again, on a different topic someday, it is an issue about using fund balances to do stuff.
And
That's
so
for a further
it doesn't
topic.
Put you on such a timeline as Tuesday. You could get it tomorrow. And then it's going to go, the consensus here is to go now to Mr. Manuel and HR Mr. Manuel will make who it needs to go to, but the consensus of the council is to get a resignation letter in hand so that we can move forward with that.
Okay, see what we can do.
All right, wonderful. Thank you for bringing that
Thank
to
you.
us.
Thank you
All
for your
right.
time.
New business, commission reports. Thank you, guys. Councilman Trollinger,
I do not have a report.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Have a report. So the council interviewed 2 candidates for the planning commission. And they're both great candidates. And I'll bring them forward indeed in November.
Okay, wonderful. Councilman Jenkins.
I have no commission reports, but I just wanted to add that some of us attended the MML conference, and I'm preparing my own trip report of what sessions I attended and also some observations and maybe some recommendations on certain issues.
All right.
Thank you.
And my report is short tonight. I did sit in on the design review board. We will be meeting in person starting at our next meeting. And we did look at a concept for apartments on Oriole Lane. They were, there was a lot of conversation and it gave them the direction that, you know, some ideas on how to head when moving forward with submitting, if they choose to submit later on. Also, we have a deadline to vote for our scarecrows, which will be on the 22nd of October. So if you would look at our scarecrows downtown, make sure you vote for them. And then some fantastic news that we did here today at the Maryland Municipal League. The governor got up and said that he will be looking to sign into legislation the tourism zone request that was actually submitted by the town of La Plata. It will be passed, what it will allow is for local ordinances to be passed, and it will benefit existing and new tourism business, including lodging, dining, retail, meeting and sports facilities, outdoor recreation areas, and event venues. It will also be able to expand on art and entertainment zones throughout the Maryland. And it's a huge win because we're not asking for money, but it is putting Maryland in as a tourism state, which will really benefit us with take advantage of state and local tax incentives. So it was a great moment to hear that the governor totally supports this. So with that, we do have a reason to go into closed session. I will entertain a motion from someone, council, if so moved.
Madam Mayor, I would make a motion to recess for a closed session regarding per Statutory Authority 3-305 subsection B7 to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. Stagecoach Crossing.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? A roll call. Councilman Trollinger,
I am in favor.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward,
Yes.
Councilman Jenkins,
Yes.
and I am as well. All right, thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.